Okay, here we are again. I've started the steeking. Now I have covered steeking in at least one other video, but hey, repetition is one of the principles of learning, so here we are again. Um, what the purpose of the steeking, which is a back stitch, is we're adding a reinforcement to the bottom of the fell. This is where the fell seam starts, right at that feature up to the top, because the fell seam is not strong under tension. It's not strong at all. So the steeking reinforces it. And the steeking also, by lining up, if you can see, look at this element of the tartan, I've sewn to this point. You can see they're all in line, but if they weren't in line, you see if it's like that, you're going to get that equivalent sort of a sawtooth effect at the bottom of the kiln. We do not want that. So when we're steeking, well, I started, I started with the first seam, the first pleat. Now, this yellow line, I rarely do this when I'm actually working by myself, but just for demonstration purposes, that yellow line represents where the next pleat's going to land. So I sew past it to a little ways. I can't really define it more than that. I've sewn it because I can feel there's one layer of cloth, there's 2 layers of cloth. I guess this is maybe 4 layers of cloth. I've sewn just about the edge of that 4th layer of cloth because I must not have my steeking come through the outside. I have seen kilts made for officers of my old regiment that were made in World War II where the steeking has gone right through, and it's not a good look. So the thing we have to worry about or pay attention to is that that's that single layer of cloth, right? That it lays flat as I'm sewing, because if I gather it, there's going to be a pucker, which we're going to see on the outside. Again, not a good look. And we want that to be flat. So I pull, I'm ready to start the next. As you can see, I'm making sure that is flat. And the next thing we want to avoid having a pucker here. And I'm not going to do it because then I'd have to undo it again. But we're making sure that this whole thing is laying flat, and then I'm putting it through, and the stitch goes in. As you can see, it's about 1/8, between a 16th of an eighth of an inch away from the seam, because we want, and then I do it again. So I got 2 passes, and now that lies flat. It doesn't have a pucker because I took the stitch too close, and this is laying flat. So those are the 2 things we want to achieve. And then from there, I just keep doing my back stitch. Oh, look at that, I managed to lose. You get to watch me rethread a needle in real time, you lucky, lucky people. Okay, there we are, back stitch. Back stitch, remember that shows where the edge of the next pleat is going to be. Back stitch, and I'm feeling the cloth. That looks right. Now, the fact that that has come off twice tells me that it's time for me to splice a new piece of thread in. In fact, let's keep this going so you can just see how I do this. So I get a measure of thread, and as you can see, let's call it a cloth yard, because literally, and I don't measure it this way, but when I'm measuring it, because my threads hang up here, as you can see, I pull down, and just from experience, just empirical experience, I know when I've got enough of thread. So it winds up being a cloth yard, which is the nose to the end of the finger. That's something I didn't know yesterday, that I've been replicating that medieval measurement. That's why an arrow is called a cloth yard, because that's the effective draw length of a longbow. Okay, so quickly threading. Oh, this is funny, because this would happen. I'd be able to do this immediately if the camera wasn't rolling. Stop at you. Okay, and I'm just going to do an overhand. Actually, generally what I do, I'll do a thumb knot, an overhand knot. As you can see, I haven't pulled it tight yet. Then I do a second overhand knot, and they pull tight together. Okay, so there, sewing black thread on dark cloth is hardly conducive to clear visuals, but there's the end of my thread. This one comes in, and I tie off that old thread, and I do it 3, and I have to remind myself to cut this off, because even though this is going to get sewn down and this is going to be trapped, there's a chance that it's going to wind up hanging down, and somebody's going to see it years later and they're going to go, what on earth was this person thinking? Okay, so there we are. I've spliced in a new thread. Let's take it to the edge of that 4 layers of cloth. I flip it down. I spread it flat. I spread it flat with my finger. I pass through, and again, it's almost like a lace rather than a stitch, because it's about a 1/16 to the left, so it doesn't pucker. And I carry on, and this is as far as I'm going to take the video, because you really don't want to watch me do this in real time for the rest of the kilt. But I'm going to go all the way to the end, and I'm feeling. Okay, I can feel there's the seam of the last pleat. That's where the pleat joins the apron. So this is 2 layers of cloth. And I'm just going to mark roughly. There's the first seam. This is not spot on. It's a little bit to the left, but I just did it quickly. That is as far as I'm going to sew the steeking. And I get to that point where I'm coming through 4 layers of cloth. I'm going to backstitch for a while so I'm anchoring it and then finally knot it and tie it off. So there we go. The next time you see my shining visage shall be when I'm doing when I'm putting in the canvas, which again I have shown in other videos, but because we're doing this as a step-by-step of a bespoke kilt, I'll do it again. Okay, thank you, and carry on.